Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
You're going to love that clean open.
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, the third in our series on the films of Zhang Yimou with his 2002 film, Hero. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com. Subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app or join us on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel. Friend of the show, Ben Lott, has written in with his blot spot. I've got a rebound on Raise the Red Lantern.
I love the intrigue and the complexity of the relationships in Raise the Red Lantern. I struggled a bit, though, because I kept waiting for Song Lian to figure things out and get the upper hand. However, it seems this isn't quite that kind of film. It's fascinating how the heavy emphasis on tradition is manipulated by these women in order to use the master to get what they want. My biggest problem was just the end, which was a tad unsatisfying. Your rank 73, my rank 157.
You left out that one part, though.
Which part is that?
The part where he's right in the middle where he says, plus it was really boring. Oh my God, I totally agree with Pete. Bore, snooze. Why'd you leave that out?
That was apparently invisible ink only for you to read. Nice try, buddy.
You don't know stuff. Andy, it's time. Let's do trailers.
for my trailer, Pete, is a film. You know, I have a hunch it's not going to be good. It's a film called The Black Coat's Daughter. It originally was made, IMDb listed as a 2015 film.
Wow.
That's right, 2015, where because it premiered at Toronto International Film Festival in September 2015, and then it played at Fantastic Fest and at the Torino Film Festival in Italy, and it kind of kept going through all these festivals all through 2016, having finally a limited release this March, and the reviews, I mean, the ratings that it's had on IMDb are pretty low. Out of, not quite 3,000 people have ranked it, and it's only 5.4 out of 10, which says it probably is pretty bad. I don't know if that's why it played in the festival circuit for so long, or if it just hasn't had enough of a viewership to give it a higher rating. But, I think it looks like an interesting film. The story of The Black Coat's Daughter is two girls must battle a mysterious evil force when they get left behind at their boarding school over winter break. It looks really creepy. It's got all of the stuff that works well for an interesting horror film. It just looks super creepy. It's got an interesting cast of faces. Emma Roberts is in it. Lucy Boynton, plus people like Lauren Hawley and James Remar pop up. It's got that vibe of just like that kind of cold, everybody kind of just seems slightly off sort of thing. And I like all of that. I think it looks really interesting in that regard. But, the story doesn't overexcite me. It just is like, okay, it's kind of interesting. And then I saw the star rating on IMDb, and we always hesitate to kind of looking at that sort of stuff. But at the same time, 5.4 is relatively low on their scale, and so I was like, oh boy. But Oz Perkins, who is the writer director of this film, he's also been an actor and has written things that I'm trying to remember what he's written. Just a bunch of these other sorts of horror movies. I'm trying to think. I think it was acting where I might have seen more of him. Like he popped up in Legally Blonde, and he popped up in 6 Degrees of Separation. And going all the way back to Psycho 2, where he played young Norman. It's kind of funny how he's just kind of had this off and on relationship with Hollywood. It looks like it's going to be his first film followed up by I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, which was a 2016 film that, I don't know if that one actually got a release in 2016 or not. I think it did. But, I don't know. I'm curious about this one. It looks like an interesting story, but it just might suck. What did you think of it?
Oh, I think I think, first of all, can we not
scary.
comment on the... Oh, shut it. Can we not at least comment on the parallels between this film and the film last week that you chose for your trailer? Do you have a thing for, like, girls in the schools that are really creepy? Is that what we're doing now? Is that anything?
I guess so. I honestly don't even remember what trailer I picked last week.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. What did I pick?
It was the Colin Farrell and Nicole
the Beguiled,
Kidman.
right?
The Beguiled, yeah.
And
no,
then a little bit before that, I picked the one with the girl at the veterinarian school, Raw.
Yes, that's right, Raw. That's right. No, I don't know what's going on with you, but I feel like you need some support. It's a cry for help. This trailer is a cry for help. I think it looks super, super creepy. I hear your hesitation, but I'm trying to cultivate, and you'll see from my trailer pick, I'm trying to cultivate a new desire to, and a willingness to adapt to more horror in my life. I'm trying to understand the benefits of it culturally, and I want to see more of it. So I was actually pretty intrigued by this trailer. I thought it looked damn creepy, and it was kind of nonsensical. Like I didn't walk away with a sense of too much of a sense of story, but I did like the atmosphere. I liked the tone, the visual tone of the film. It looked very much it had kind of a Silent Hill vibe, the game, and I liked that. I appreciate that, and so I'm willing to give it a shot. I'll give it a shot like on a Sunday morning about 10:30 on a very small screen.
Here's the thing about movies like this is I can find it very easy to watch bad horror movies because they just, they're still entertaining to watch. So even if it is a 5.4, I probably still will get some enjoyment out of it. So there you go. But yeah, it is going to have its limited release March 31st, finally. And so we'll be able to catch it then and chat more about it.
My trailer, Andy, is, like I said, I'm trying to cultivate a love of horror. We'll see how that works. It's called The Bad Batch. It's from writer-director Annalili Amirpour. It stars, just check out this cast.
Oh, I know.
Jason Momoa, Aquaman, coming up. Keanu Reeves, we know John Wick. Giovanni Ribisi. Oh, dear God, for the unobtainium. Diego Luna. Oh, Diego Luna. So we got some Rogue One. We've got Jim Carrey. What? Jim Carrey. Suki Waterhouse. What? This cast is amazing. And it is the story. Now the story. It is a dystopian love story in a Texas wasteland set in a community of cannibals. Would you have put those things together, Andy?
I would never.
The cannibals and the cast? It's bananas. This is a crazy trailer. It's like Mad Max, but they actually eat each other. It's kind of, it's got a grindhouse vibe to it. It looks like Keanu Reeves plays this sort of cult leader. Jason Momoa is all tatted up. He's got he looks pretty rugged, but he always looks pretty rugged. Who are we kidding? I think it has a really interesting visual style. It's probably not going to be great as a film like yours. I mean, it's coming in at about a 6 on IMDb, but I'm going to check it out. I don't know anything from Annalili Amirpour. She has only done A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. No, she's done a lot more than that. She's written and directed, I think, about 11 films, it looks like, on IMDb, but I haven't seen any of them, and so I don't know what to make of her stuff. Have you seen anything else from her?
I don't think so, but the name is...
Bunch of shorts.
Yeah, the name is very familiar for some reason, but I have not seen any of her stuff. It's interesting, though, that A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night was a short first before she made that into a feature. I don't know. I'm curious about it, aside from the fact that I love her name. But I just think that this looks super cool. And when Keanu Reeves popped up in the trailer, it totally threw me because it looks so against type of kind of what he's been playing for so long. And the character has such a great look. And it's like, oh, this is so exciting to see Keanu Reeves doing something like this. So I can't wait to see him in the role.
Disappointingly, I wish I could tell you when you will be able to see him in the role. I don't know. It hit in 2016. It hit Venice, Toronto. September it hit Fantastic Fest. I don't have any release date for 2017 for this film more broadly. So keep an eye out for it. It looks like something. It's worth checking out the trailer. So go to the site nextreel.com and check out the trailer on this film because it's crazy. It's crazy.
Totally is.
Is the sword the only answer, Andy?
A soldier with no name. A warrior with supernatural skill. And no fear. On a mission of revenge against the army that massacred his people.
Hero, Andy, 2002-ish, directed by Zhang Yimou, it's written by Li Feng, Wang Bin, and Zhang Yimou, stars Jet Li, Jet Li, action hero superstar, Tony Leung, Maggie Cheung, Zhang Ziyi, and Donnie Yen, digging Donnie Yen. He was great in Rogue One.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the people. This is the story. This is a thing I didn't know, Andy. Did you know that this was based on a true thing or a true 2,200-year-old story from Chinese history? Did you know that?
I did because, one, it sounds like it when you watch it. It's got a big prologue and a big epilogue that pretty much makes it sound like, this is a true story. So I kind of was like, I guess this is kind of a truthful sort of thing. And I had actually seen another film that was kind of about this by Chen Kaige called The Emperor and the Assassin. which is another beautiful film that actually happens to star Gong Li, who we had been talking about. But that's just another fantastic film that happens to kind of be about this story. I mean, it's a little different take on the whole thing, but yeah. So I guess I had kind of gone into this knowing it, although I don't think I went into Hero knowing that it was this story.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same place as you. I went into it just remembering how beautiful it is, and frankly, after last week's snooze-a-thon, that gorgeous moving wall of color.
Oh God! Fie on thee!
Come on, you have to admit this one moves a little bit faster.
You better watch it, or I'm gonna blow a whole bunch of yellow leaves at you.
The dust in my eyes, Andy. Dust in my eyes. I really enjoyed this film. I think there are some of those weird like suspension of disbelief problems that I have with it, but it's beautiful. It is. You get that same just fantastic use of color. It reminded me so much of Judo, except for the silks that were blowing around were all being worn by these people, and I think they're about the same length as the ones in Judo. I think the color was captured beautifully. It was, I love the use of color as a visual indicator of where we are in the story. I found it just fascinating. And of course, I am a sucker for the wire work. I love it. I love these wuxia films that offer us that visual treatment. I think it's fantastic. There are people who feel very much the opposite. I don't understand those people, but I deeply enjoy this film. I had a great time. We watched it as a family movie night, and it was everybody felt the same. It was just wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I really enjoy this film. I don't love it as much as Raise the Red Lantern, but I do really enjoy this film. It's just a feast to watch and just let it kind of wash over you, and just the whole story I think works so well. I always find it lags a little bit in the second act for me, but that being said, it still is just overall just such an enjoyable thing to take part in. But I was not very familiar with wuxia and this whole this type of just kind of this martial arts sort of film, which is really kind of like, I think, looking at it on Wikipedia, it says it's a genre of Chinese fiction concerning the adventures of martial artists in ancient China. Although wuxia is traditionally a form of literature, its popularity has caused it to spread to diverse art forms such as Chinese opera, manhwa, films, television series, and video games. It forms part of popular culture in many Chinese-speaking communities around the world. It's just, the films are so fun. And what I think really makes it such a treat is seeing all the wire work and everything that they did that I really fell in love with back in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which came out in 2000. And I know it had been around before that, but that was kind of my first experience with it. And so it's so fun to see how different directors kind of use it in these films. And it's gorgeous to watch. Now, here's an interesting little tidbit for you. Did you know that the earliest wuxia films, they go back to the 20s? I didn't realize that they had been making them for so long. And in the films like that the Shaw brothers had done and King Hu, they had been using wire and trampoline acrobatics plus sped up camera technique all through the whole period when they were doing them. So I find it interesting that this sort of stuff had been going on for so long. And I mean, I had seen martial arts films before, and but never had I seen this sort of stuff. I think I'd seen probably the trampoline stuff where you see the guys flying through the air, but I don't think I'd ever seen wire work until like the 2000s. So
no, and I think there are critics who and purists who would argue that wuxia, as it gains popularity, is not technically a martial art, right? It's closer to a dance. And in fact, there's no real hand-to-hand stuff. This is all weapons in this film in particular. And so there are people who are pretty adamant about that, that it's not. But I did read one critic who said that who tried to make the case that wuxia was the way that these martial arts films had adapted to the video game craze, trying to make the flight look more like a video game character, which obviously doesn't sit right just on the surface. But then when you go back and hear what you're saying, that these things have been around since the 20s, no, obviously there's something else to it.
Yeah, absolutely. The funny thing is that, people in the West have tried making wuxia films and really done a poor job. I mean, Ang Lee, I think, is one of the people who probably kind of got away with it because of his Asian heritage. But for the most part, it's not something that Westerners have been really able to succeed with, except oddly Kung Fu Panda, that franchise, which I think is so funny because it's just such a hugely successful series, and they kind of were admirers of the genre, and they wanted to kind of create this magical thing in those films. And people in China really say that is actually a great contribution to the art form, which of all films,
that's our grand export.
It's like, and I love those films. I mean, they're really fun to watch.
You're welcome, China.
It's just so funny. Oh yes, well that's wuxia for you.
You give us Zhang Yimou. We give you Jack Black.
Oh man.
Oh my goodness. Remind me to wear my Kung Fu Panda t-shirt when I go.
Yes.
That'll be
yes,
a treat
indeed.
for everybody. It's a little tight.
You
know what? I think an interesting mark on this film is I'm trying to parse how his politics have changed. You know, we spent a lot of time talking about Raise the Red Lantern and the politics of Zhang Yimou and what he was saying about the period of the 1920s, and here he's taking a step way back to the Warring States period, and looking through the lens at this period of grand civil war. And the whole question that this poses is it right to fight for it, to give up the fight in favor of authoritarianism if it stops the fighting and unites the country? Or is it worth continuing to fight to resist authoritarianism? I find that a really interesting statement that he's making, because the first couple of films that we looked at are very intimate, right? They're intimate kind of displays of the people and the houses, and as a reflection of the government and the state. And this is very much looking at the state at a period that was, formative for China. How well do you think does this film resonate for you as a political statement when you think about it like that, or is it really just better left to look at the fancy colors and the sword?
Well, I think it's really an interesting point, and I think there's a couple things about that. One, there were critics who actually felt that the film was advocating autocracy, and they felt, I think it was the person who reviewed it in the Village Voice, who said that it had a cartoon ideology, and it was justification for a ruthless leadership comparable to Triumph of the Will, which I thought was a really interesting comparison. I was like, wow, I hadn't gone that far with this. I mean, I actually really liked the whole concept and everything. One of the things that I think was so interesting is because they apparently there's this translation difficulty with this whole concept of I don't know how you say it, Qian Sha.
Me and China.
Hey, you're better than me.
They didn't tell me.
Well, I guess
Jian Cha, I guess. Yeah.
Literally, it translates as under heaven, and it's a phrase that kind of means the world. And the way that it was translated in the U.S. release was our land. Interesting is that the King of Qin is that he is, he's warring to unite the people, and the way that it's translated is our land, as if his goal is to kind of bring China together. But there's this idea that what it is he's trying to create peace under heaven is kind of the one way that it could be interpreted, as if, this whole thing is like bringing like helping end the war and finding a way to unite people, not just here in China, but really kind of as a global thing, and just find peace. And it's an interesting way to look at just kind of the way that this word translates or doesn't translate very well, because there are words like that just don't have as clean a translation. And it's like, is it really about this guy who's trying to just create this one country to kind of dominate as like a Hitler sort of thing, like that Village Voice reviewer? Or was it really meant to be kind of, I have this vision of bringing everybody together and finding a way to create peace in the world? And I really like that. I think it's an interesting look at how translations can really change how you read a film. And I didn't have that reading at all. I really had kind of the one land, let's unite China and be this dominant force sort of reading on it until I read about this translation.
I think that makes you a snowflake. Doesn't that make you a snowflake?
I am a delicate snowflake.
Because you're so optimistic and happy.
Am, right.
You're a delicate snowflake. I think because the challenge, the other side of that is the period that this was depicting, the Warring States period. This was a time of wars, but the wars were predominantly until the end, where there was just great upheaval and destruction by the people and of the people. Much of this period was made up of wars between hired armies, right? They were professional armies, and they didn't really impact the people. In fact, the people were actually, it was a period of great sort of cultural progressiveness, right? This was the period of the birth of the 100 schools of thought, right? Taoism, Confucianism, legalism, they all come out of this period. There was a strong economy, and in reality, Qin Shi Huang, this dictatorship that ensued ends up, he creates a police state. One China ends up, ending creative and philosophical development. So as inspired as the one land under heaven kind of mantra is, the reality is he did end up really putting his foot on the neck of a lot of progressive sort of ideology for the sake of unity. And so I think that is what that is sort of at the crux of the question of this film is, was that okay? Because it ends up, we got one big China.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting that you brought this up as, has Zhang Yimou really kind of changed his political viewpoint and his ideologies here? And it does kind of feel that way. It feels like his earlier films were how the political system in China was really crushing individual voice. And now, 10 years later, he's making this film, and it really feels like that, we worked hard to create this one China and we're all in it together sort of thing. And it seems like it's almost like, let's just kind of go along with the system because it's this big, massive thing and we're a part of it. And, we need to help keep it this way. It is kind of feel like there is this shift in him.
Right, because those earlier films were looking at a period where he's making films right out of the cultural, the sort of Chinese Cultural Revolution. He is definitely, inspired, I think, by a different sort of worldview, and I think this film is the result of a shift. And I enjoy watching it, maybe for thinking about his perspective change even more than just what it represents on screen. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, really. But it's interesting, though, because you look at Zhang Yimou and kind of what he's always saying about his films. And, I'm not saying any of that stuff. I'm just telling a story. And this does take such a shift in ideology that it's like, well, maybe he is just telling these stories, and he's letting people kind of read into it what they want. And he's just kind of focused on, this is a really interesting tale. So who knows? Maybe.
I don't know. I'm a pretty firm believer, though. I'm a pretty firm believer that every character in a film, embodies its creator in some way, shape, or form, right? This is it. They are mirrors of, in some way, of what we want the world to see about about itself. And so I don't know. I still kind of stand with the idea that he's not in a position to make a statement about his works because of some, historical challenges that he's had with the Chinese Film Board, et cetera. I think what we'll really be able to see is when we come back together and talk about next week's film, Does next week's film stand make a trend?
Does next week's film answer the question, why was the king trying to unite everybody?
Yes, because I think, Andy, we know, you and I both know, it's because of the dragons.
Exactly. He knew. He was a smart king.
What's really interesting, actually, is I think Qin Shi Huang is responsible for the Great Wall, right? That's when the wall went up at the cost of 1 million builders' lives. I mean, this is maybe the Great Wall is actually the sequel to Hero, and we didn't even know it. Let's talk about the script, can we? Because the script is kind of complicated. Feng Li, Bin Wang, and Zhang Yimou. The way the script is constructed, it ends up sort of looping in on itself, right? The whole story is about Jet Li's character. He comes to the king to tell of his conquest so that he can get closer to the king. And every time he tells of a conquest, the king lets him get a little bit closer. And it turns out through the telling of these stories, this fable unravels, and we learn that it turns out Jet Li is actually an assassin himself. How does the script work for you? The structure of the script?
Upon watching it this go around, it had little hints of Harakiri, a fantastic film in which somebody comes to tell their story to a particular character, and as they tell the character this story, it relays this situation that is about to happen between the two of them. And so there was a lot of that, plus a lot of Rashomon, which I understand that Zhang Yimou referenced as a film that he was inspired by, because of the way that you get the different stories, and we as the viewers get to kind of watch these different stories unfold. As first we have Nameless telling the story of how he came to be there. Then you have the Emperor kind of saying, well, no, I think you're lying. This is what I think happens. And then you have Nameless going, okay, you're right, but this is where you're wrong, and kind of retelling certain parts of it. It's interesting to see it play out that way. But yeah, it's one of those stories where, because it's not, Rashomon, I think, is just such a genius concept, because you have the same story being told from different people who were involved in that particular story, the thief and the woman and the man, as these people have heard the various takes on this crime. And the perspectives, I think that the individual perspectives that's what makes that film so strong. With this film, you're getting lying. You're getting these lies that, Nameless is kind of doing this, trying to pitch a story that doesn't work. And then the Emperor it's almost like he kind of takes a crack at it to see if he can do it. And then Nameless is like, well, no, not quite. This is really how it went. And, And it's interesting, because what ends up happening is we end up seeing a lot of stuff that it's like, okay, so is this a real thing or is this not a real thing now? Because now I'm not quite so sure anymore of what was really real. And I think that's a real challenge in the film too, right? Because I think it's too clever by half. Right, because you have them coming. He tells a story. You learn he's telling a story. We hear another interpretation of story, and eventually, it's not even an interpretation of a story. It's not even something that we know the characters are telling. There's one of these great fights that is actually just imagined by the king, and I think that at some point, that went too far for me in the narrative, in so far as I loved that sequence. Like, that sequence is my favorite in the entire film. I don't like how they got there. And I think you have to, the effects are so good that if you love this film, it's because you buy into the look of it and the journey of the physicality of it, in spite of some of these kind of narrative hoops you have to jump through to make sense of it. Yeah, right. And that I feel like that probably is the area in the film where things start to slow down a little bit for me, because I feel like we're seeing a lot of stuff play out, and it's like, well, I don't, this isn't even really a real thing anymore. and I think that's some of the difficulty of it is having these different stories. I mean, we watched Nameless battling Snow in front of the Qin army like 3 times in 3 different, slightly different ways. And it can get a little like, okay, I already saw him fight her, and I understand now there's different subtext behind the fight because of the way that the story has shifted. But at the same time, yeah, it's like some of this stuff. I mean, like you said, as beautiful as it is, it's just a fictionalized version of what's happening, or a guess, really. And I think is it the lake sequence that you're talking about that you love so much?
Yeah.
Where it's like, yeah, the whole thing, it's like, it's just a speculative story by the king, right?
Right. It's a complete. There is no justification for having it in the in his head in the film. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And yet it is, in terms of sort of the ballet of it, it's the most beautiful sequence for me in the film.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really a stunner.
What about Zhang Yimou as a director of this piece? I mean, did you learn anything watching this? Did you make any connections to his prior films?
He really holds on to a lot of the way that he likes to structure his films. Formal shots, long takes, incredible colors, just image compositions. You've got one man on this incredibly vast staircase. You've got this just shots with thousands of soldiers in them. The way that the fights unfold, you've got that incredible black and white mind's eye of the fight that you have. Images like the slow motion shot, which just blows me away when Nameless is heading to attack Sky, and his face is just hitting those lines of water that are kind of falling, and just kind of hitting them, and it's just going through them. It's just so beautiful. But I think one thing that I learned from him, and I've heard something similar to Akira Kurosawa, another incredible filmmaker from Asia, who would stop shooting because the clouds in the sky were not right. And I think this happened on Ron when he was making that, where he kept coming back day after day, and the clouds weren't right, and so he would leave. And it took, I can't remember how long before they were finally able to shoot the scenes that he wanted, because the clouds finally looked right. It sounds like Zhang Yimou has some of that tendency in the way that he directs. He's very, very specific about things that he wants. For example, we're talking about the fight up at the lake. He only would shoot the shots where you could see the lake when that lake was perfectly still like a mirror. And that only happened 2 hours a day, because otherwise the currents would kind of would just create ripples all across the whole lake. And it was only like from 10 to noon. And so they had to get there every day at like 5 a.m. so they could get everything set up, so that by 10 a.m. they were rolling on these incredible shots. And it took them like 3 weeks to get all the shots that they needed, because of the amount of time that that they had to work in. And likewise, with the leaves, with these incredibly yellow leaves in this forest, when our two women are fighting in their incredible red robes, and just these leaves are incredibly yellow, and he had people sitting in the forest waiting for the leaves to change. And when they started to change, they would gather all the yellow leaves, and then they would sort all the yellow leaves, and they had different sections for the different types of yellow that they had. And they organized everything so that when they did this fight, they could blow these leaves at the two women with these blowers, just so they could, get these incredible swirls of the leaves. And then when they would cut it, they would gather all the leaves again, and they would clean them off and resort them so they could go at it again. It's just like an incredibly meticulous nature that he had, and he really pushed to make his vision come to life. What I heard him say is, as a director, you have to be very determined to get what you want. But he said you also have to be very flexible when appropriate. And so I think stuff like this, it's clear that he's very determined to get what he wants. But I think the key is that there is some flexibility in stuff that we have in the film. It's just might not be this sort of stuff, but I feel like there are other scenes where he's probably allowing some of that flexibility to come through. So I think that's a critical thing about him, is that he has both of those things there, even though it's the determined stuff that I think really shines through.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the other piece of it is you can't underestimate or underscore enough his, again, his affinity with the camera. I mean, he's just such a strong visual filmmaker, not even in terms of, the setup of these incredible leaf shots, right? The beautiful thing, but just in terms of where he places the camera, the way he captures faces in the frame, the way he captures the stunning size of the armies that he's dealing with. It is. I really felt a sense of that sort of grounded ability with the camera in this film, just like I felt in both Judo and Raise the Red Lantern. That I could see just straight across. This is a guy who really understands his tool. Let's talk first shot, last shot.
The first shot, I guess if you look at it as kind of a history piece, the first shot is a map of China and the 7 warring states on the map. After a whole bunch of on-screen text kind of detailing the history of the period, setting us up for heroes on both sides of the war, all of that. If you kind of take that history aspect out of it and you look at the actual film itself, the first shot is a medium close-up of horses' hooves pounding the ground from just masses of the riders who are soldiers for the King of Qin.
And the last shot, again, technically, it's the panning shot across the Great Wall of China with the epilogue text detailing the hero's burial for the nameless assassin, how the King of Qin went on to unite the country and build the Great Wall, and how the Chinese people today still call it one land. But not really, because that was an Anglification of bad translation.
Right.
I guess the alternate ending, the alternate last shot is with the epilogue, we have the long static shot of the king sitting in his throne in his empty palace. I guess I kind of prefer that one.
I mean, the history one is just obvious, right? It's a map of China divided, and at the end, it's like now he's succeeded and he's created this great wall to protect his people. It's just, it feels like a pretty obvious thing. That's why I think the other one's a little more interesting.
I do too. And so when we're looking at the horses' hooves pounding on the grasses with the riders and then ending on this lonely king in his throne room, what does that tell you?
I think it just says a lot about the nature of the war and really kind of what this king is seeking is, all the fighting going to lead to the respite and kind of the unification that he's looking for. And it's one of those things where I feel like in the end it does, but it's one of those things where you get a sense from the king himself when he's talking to Nameless about Broken Sword's realization about what the king is up to and that he's trying to do this. And he's like, finally, someone understands me. It's almost like that same sort of thing where the king had to become like the worst person imaginable to kind of destroy all these people fighting, only to bring the peace that and the unification that all these people needed. And it really leaves him in a place where, he did it, but now he's kind of left alone because of the amount of destruction he had to cause.
Is that redemptive?
I guess it's one of those things. Like, do you look at it as redemptive because the way that he was able to unify? Maybe, even though it had to come from a lot of destruction. I mean, it all goes back to all those critics of the film who have these issues, right? Or
is it redemptive because it's redemptive for the critics who, in the end, you have to look at the cost of this great reign of authoritarianism, and in fact, he is left alone. Right, the story thematically ends with him alone in his throne room. Still, he has gained effectively nothing.
Right,
and he has at the cost of a death of ultimately a good man.
Right,
the good man is Jet Li, plays Nameless, and we know Jet Li.
We do, and we certainly like him. It's funny though. I don't think I had ever seen Jet Li in anything until he started popping up in some of the American films. Like, I want to say it was that awful Lethal Weapon 4. That was the first time that I actually saw him. And then it's just kind of off and on. He's been kind of popping up all over the place. And I really enjoy watching him. I think he's a really interesting actor. And it does make me, especially like watching this and just really seeing what he can do. I want to go back and watch some of his earlier fight films where he really just brings a lot of that incredible martial arts to the table.
Totally. I think the first thing I saw, I mean, it was obviously Lethal Weapon, and then The One in 2001, and then Hero came out. So, but this is when, you know, I started getting interested in just what he, you know, his amazing capability as a physical actor, and then The Mummy: Tomb of the Dragon Emperor came out, and that's a terrible movie. That is a terrible movie, but he is the Dragon Emperor, and that's sad.
I enjoyed him in The Expendables.
Haven't really seeked out. I haven't seen any of the Expendables.
I only
movies.
saw the first one, but you know, he was fun in it. I mean, it you know, is one of those. It was an action movie. It did what it needed to do, so I enjoyed it. You know, we should do a Once Upon in China trilogy and do those all three of those films. I'd love to kind of check those out.
Once Upon a Time in China. Once Upon a Time in China and China 2, Once Upon a Time in China 3. What about Once Upon a Time in China and America?
That's right. Maybe we'll do all four.
I don't think I've seen any.
I haven't
Have
either.
I seen them?
I haven't either. We should do it.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's.
How about Tony Leung as Broken Sword?
Another person who's just great to watch. I mean, we've talked about him in actually our Listener's Choice episode about In the Name of Love, which is, or In the Mood for Love. Sorry, totally wrong thing. In the Mood for Love was just another gorgeous, gorgeous film. And he was fantastic in it. Here, he's also just amazing. And he's not a guy who's really a martial arts person, but he really pulls it off, and he does an amazing job here. And we didn't even mention that, you know, Zhang Yimou, because this was really his first action film, he brought on action director Tony Leung to kind of help him bring all of the action to life. So I think we have to give a huge shout out to Tony Leung as far as bringing these fights together and really making some amazing stuff happen here. Because he makes Tony Leung look like he knows what he's doing.
He sure does.
Of course, it didn't keep Tony from injuring his ankle. When they were doing the lake fight, he hurt his ankle, and his doctor said that he was going to have to be out for 3 weeks, and he wasn't going to be able to do any wire work, and he couldn't do any of it. And he ended up coming back the next day to keep going, because he's just like, no, we're going to just make it happen. And he says to this day, his ankle still has problems.
You go, Tony Leung.
For the love of the art.
One for the team.
That's right.
That's the truth. About Maggie Cheung as Flying Snow.
Yes, reuniting with Tony Leung from In the Mood for Love. I mean, she's just gorgeous, and she's just so great in stuff like this, which is funny because this is not something that she ever has really done before. Again, like Tony, this was all new to her, but she just does such a great job. And watching her spin around in the air on the wires and everything, I mean, she's just so stinking good at it. I have a great time watching her. And I love that Zhang Yimou kind of just brought this cast together of just such amazing, amazing actors. Not necessarily because of, you know, he didn't necessarily focus on it. I just want to get people who know how to do the martial arts. He just found great actors and allowed his action director to kind of get these people to do those things.
She is lovely, and she's, you know, we should talk about Zhang Ziyi, who it almost feels like became sort of the well, I don't know, the comparison to Gong Li is apt. But those two together, I think, make a fantastic on-screen sort of sparring couple. They were just fantastically beautiful physically, just watching them fight.
Oh, they're great. You know, her part is, it's an interesting one. It's not as well developed. At the beginning, I was a little kind of like, who is this? Why is she around? And then you kind of go, oh, okay, she's kind of the assistant for Broken Sword, and she kind of, you know, he's her master. But there's also this little love affair that they kind of have. There's some interesting stuff going on with her. I feel like I enjoy her more in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and more in House of Flying Daggers, where I feel like she gets a lot more to do. Yeah. I think that the fight scene between her and Maggie is just gorgeous here, but I just don't feel like she has as much at stake in the film. So those other films, yeah. I think that she's just such a key part, and I really love what she brings in those films.
Totally. How about Chen Daoming as the King of Qin?
I like him. I don't really know much about him, but I think he's great as the Emperor. I think there's something really just kind of heavy about him. I think he just plays it perfectly. And he's also somebody who had been in some of Zhang Yimou's other films. He was in Coming Home just a few years ago, and he was in Infernal Affairs 3. I know he did that first Infernal Affairs film. He ended up popping up in the third one. So.
And finally, we have Donnie Yen as Long Sky. Donnie Yen is another, full-on martial arts action star.
Yeah, and it's funny. I don't think that I really knew who Donnie Yen was when I first saw this. And I don't think, and I had seen like Blade 2, he was in that. I mean, he's been in a lot of stuff, and I feel like I've missed all of it. And then Rogue One comes out, and I'm like, who's this Donnie Yen guy? He's great. I'm like, oh, wow. I've missed a lot. I mean, IMDb has him with 71 credits that I've just completely missed. I mean, yeah, I feel so dumb about that. He was in the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragons Netflix sequel, Sword of Destiny. But
I still haven't watched that one. So you haven't seen any of the Yip Man movies?
No.
Well, there you go.
I know. I have a lot to catch up on. But what I think is so fun about him is he and Jet Li have apparently just a massive fight in Once Upon a Time in China 2. And it sounded to me like they had actually cast somebody else, or were considering to cast somebody in the role of Sky in this particular film. And Jet Li was just like, he told Zhang, it would be really fun to cast Donnie in this film, and particularly in this role, so he and I can kind of continue this rivalry, and keep the fight going from when we were doing it in Once Upon a Time in China 2. And they did. And so they dropped the other actor and went with Donnie. And they ended up just kind of having this amazing sword fight in here. And what I loved about it is it sounded like they got to do a lot of kind of improv, coming up with the way that they were going to do the fight along with Tony Leung. And I love that this is the one where we get the opportunity to kind of do that black and white, where they're thinking about the fight. And it's something that I've seen so few times, but I love the whole concept, and where they kind of watch the whole thing play out in their heads before they actually go to action. And it's such a neat concept.
Yeah. See, now why is it that works for me? That absolutely works for me, but having the king do essentially the same thing does not.
Yeah, I don't know. Or why Tom Cruise does it and it doesn't work. Well, I know why that didn't work.
Let's talk about the production a little bit, shall we? Getting it made.
It was a grueling one. I mean, they shot it for 6 months, kind of all over China. I wrote a few of the names down. Let's see if I can get them. Danjin Sha, a desert in western China. They shot there. They shot at the lakes of the Qishua province. They shot at the forests of Inner Mongolia. When they're filming at the lake, it was, I think, about 3 weeks or so. And some of the locations that, as they were kind of going around, they actually had spots where they would have to drive 2.5 to 3 hours just to get to a place where they'd get out, go film a few shots, and then head back in, just to get the shots. I mean, I love that they did that because it really sells it. You get just incredible, incredible locations in this film.
As somebody who loves movies, I know you love that, but as somebody who I know is right now in the middle of a massive pre-production schedule as a producer, what do you think about that?
That it exhausts me thinking about something like that, and the amount of vehicles you would need to kind of get people from place to place, especially when you see the number of extras they have. Oh my goodness. Not to mention finding places to feed everybody and getting the porta-johns out there. And I mean, everything that goes into a production like that. I mean, it's just so complex. I can only imagine how difficult it would be. But, they pull it off, and you don't have to think about those sorts of things when you're watching it. Thank goodness.
I am now going to be thinking about it, especially in that lake scene. Where did they go to the bathroom?
Exactly.
I'm going to be thinking about that from now on.
Things that you think about, yes, when you're producing projects. What I found interesting about the locations and everything, I mean, aside from the amazing locations, is the set that they built for the up in, I guess, Hongdian. They built the King's Palace there, and it apparently was the largest movie set ever made in China, at least at the time. I don't know if anything's beat it since then, but I mean, and that is a massive, massive palace. I mean, you see him climbing up those stairs, and those stairs go all the way from the left of your screen to the right of your screen, and you're in a just incredible wide shot.
Yeah, that's an amazing shot. But again, talk about working in service to his style as a filmmaker. He loves those wide shots. It's amazing.
It's all the world building, and this is a filmmaker who thrives on world building.
Cinematography, he worked with Christopher Doyle. We have talked about Christopher Doyle, obviously, on this show when we talked about In the Mood for Love. He's an Australian. He lives, or he's worked a number of times with Zhang Yimou and Wong Kar-wai, and he's a good camera guy. We like him, but I have a really hard time seeing this as anything other than a Zhang Yimou film.
That's an interesting point. I mean, In the Mood for Love obviously also has an incredible look, incredible colors. But it is interesting because this film, when you watch it and you compare it with the last two films that we've talked about, and even though they were 10 years before this or more, they still all have a very, very similar look. So I would agree with you. It does feel very much like a Zhang Yimou film, not like a Christopher Doyle film.
Obviously, we've talked about some of the stunning effects in terms of stunts. That we've talked about the flying and the wires, but there was some we've got some CG in there, right?
Yeah, all the arrows when they're shooting all the arrows around and everything. I mean, they do a great job with the CG as far as like cleaning up the wire work and all of that sort of stuff. But man, I don't know, man. I mean, it's really cool seeing all those arrows flying through the sky. But there were a few times where we're like riding along on the back of the arrow as it's flying through the air, and it just looks so
You didn't like
bad. That? Oh, it's just, some of them were just terrible.
Did you have an easier time with that or with the sequence where, he's out there with Maggie on the roof and they're sweeping away the arrows as they come down upon the house?
I had an easier time with that, actually.
Did you?
Yeah, I mean,
that's the part that gave me trouble. It was just a little bit, it was tough to look at.
All of it was, all of the stuff with the arrows is a little artificial, but it still is entertaining to watch. I just, the shots where we're right there in the arrows flying down, that's what bugged me. But it made up for it when you get to see the student get the arrow to the head, which is a terrible thing to say, but...
You're so dark.
But I was just like, damn, they went there, and... Wow, that was kind of crazy.
And that was a cool sequence, too, because these students are getting hit with these arrows, but because of the strength of the Zhou province, they all came back to do their calligraphy to prove the point that the brush is mightier than the arrow.
Right.
And in fact, for at least some of them, it wasn't.
They weren't doing it. Those were B students.
Oh, B students, right, okay. We gotta just jump before we wrap on to the music. Tan Dun is responsible for the music, along with, oh my God, Yitzhak Perlman.
What a combination! And I was so surprised, but I think it works so well to kind of blend just the beautiful violin of Yitzhak Perlman playing in this score. I mean, just the amazing, just the tugging at your heartstrings sort of music, just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful stuff. Plus, I guess there's a Japanese drummer group called Kodo that they do all the amazing drum work in here. And it's just, I mean, it's the music just from beginning to end is great. Tan Dun said a few things. First about music, he said music is words or meaning that the director wants to say but has no way to say it, which I liked that, he kind of, this is how the composer kind of helps the director find those words. But then what he also said in working in this particular film is that he wanted to be able to have people hear the color coming out of his music. And so for every different part, he kind of shifted the music a little bit to try to make it tie in with whatever particular color that sequence was really emphasizing, whether it's the blue or the green or the red or the yellow or the white. And I thought that was really interesting. And I loved that he actually worked to kind of do that. So I'm a huge fan of the score of this. It's just really beautiful stuff.
This is one you really can't. I think between this and Crouching Tiger, you can just shuffle them together, and it's just gorgeous all the way through.
Really is. Yeah.
I really love the sense that you get from this. How did it do at award season?
It did well for itself. Again, Zhang Yimou got nominated for Best Foreign Language Film Oscar. However, they lost to Nowhere in Africa, which is a film I have seen, and I really loved that film. I find it a little hard to argue that loss because I thought that film was really powerful. But if you look at how the film did over in Asia, it really did well. The two big awards in China are the Golden Rooster Awards, where Zhang Yimou won Best Director, and the 100 Flowers Awards, where the movie won Best Picture, jointly with a couple other films. But then you look at the Hong Kong Film Awards. I mean, it was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actress, Best Cinematography, which Christopher Doyle won, Best Editing, Best Art Direction, which won, Best Costume and Makeup Design, which won, Best Action Choreography, which won, Best Original Score, which won, Best Original Song, Best Sound Design, which won, Best Visual Effects, which won. This was just like the film that year at the Hong Kong Film Awards. So kudos to it. I mean, it really did well for itself. And for kind of a martial arts film, I think that that kind of surprised a lot of people, that there's actually a lot more going on with this film than just a kung fu action sort of thing.
That's really interesting. And it holds up well. It's a film I watched it again, and I feel like I really connect to it. And maybe again, because I watched it back to back with Raise the Red Lantern. Did the numbers bear out its success?
Well, Zhang Yimou's first foray into wuxia cost either 17 million or 31 million to make, depending on your sources. Maybe it cost 17 million and then they spent an additional 14 million in prints and advertising. It's really hard to say. But for the purposes of what I do here, I'm going to go with the higher number. And in today's dollars, that means it costs about 41.5 million. The film was released in China October 24th, 2002, then Hong Kong a few months later. Miramax bought the U.S. distribution rights and, as Harvey is known to do sometimes, delayed the release of it 6 times. It just took forever for them to get off their duff with this thing. They finally released it August 27th, 2004, opposite Anacondas, The Hunt for the Blood Orchid, everybody's favorite sequel, Super Babies, Baby Geniuses 2, everybody's other favorite sequel, and Suspect Zero. It actually took the intervention of Disney executives and Quentin Tarantino to get the Weinsteins to release it finally. And Quentin Tarantino, because of his passion for the film, he lent his name to the promotional material so that it was actually released as Quentin Tarantino Presents to help create a bigger box office draw. Hero went on to become one of the top films in Hong Kong the year it was released, and for its U.S. release, went straight to number 1 at the box office. Its opening weekend was the second highest opening weekend for a foreign language film. Only Passion of the Christ opened better. It was actually the highest grossing foreign film. I think it was the first foreign film to hit number 1 at the box office on its opening weekend or something crazy like that. Wow. It went on to make 53.7 million domestically and 123.9 million everywhere else, giving it a grand total of 177.6 million, or just shy of 238 million in today's dollars. It is among the it's among the highest grossing foreign language films and martial arts films in North American box office history. In the end, the film made an adjusted profit per finished minute of 1.9 million. So nice to see for this foray into a new type of storytelling for Zhang Yimou that it did so well.
The one note that I found as I was looking for the poster art, did you notice the change they made to the Quentin Tarantino Presents version of the American release of the poster?
Oh, yes.
That's a bit of controversy. They replaced the sword in Nameless's hand from the traditional Chinese sword to a katana, Japanese katana, which causes no end of uproar. You don't want to be on the business end of that particular sword fit.
It's a silly change to make. Clearly, they're just trying to tie it
So
into
stupid.
Kill Bill and Quentin Tarantino. It's just one of those odd little things that I guess they say, hey, let's do it because audiences will love it.
You know what would be fun? Let's completely change 2,200 years of culture. All right. Andy, I think it's time for us to rank it.
Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/the next reel. You can find our profile, or you can just swipe up on your podcast device of choice, and you'll see the link to this film in Flickchart right there. Tap on it, you'll go straight to the film, and we can rank it together. Go on, let's do it. We'll do it together. It'll be a little date.
All right, first up, we have Hero. This is going to be a tough one. Joe versus the volcano.
I know that it's Andy. Do we really want to relegate this film? It's a beautiful film. Do we want to relegate it to the bottom half of the chart?
I don't know. What are you going to do?
Is that our strategy? That sucks. We've done it before, but that sucks. It's starting to feel bad. They're both great movies. I am going to choose... I think I'm going to choose Hero.
You know, this is, I would instantly pick Joe versus the volcano because I would watch it first. That being said, there is so much strength in Hero. Just the visual tapestry that Zhang Yimou puts in front of us. Even though I'd watch Joe first, I am going to side with you on Hero because of the artistry that went into it.
Oh, man. You had to let me... See, I'm cutting like 5 minutes of me breathing.
I know. I just wanted to do that for you.
Andy, you're a snot.
Oh, I'm awesome.
Oh, what's next?
All right, next up, we have Hero. This is a really perfect pairing. Hero or Raise the Red Lantern.
Hero. Hands down, absolutely.
Now, Hero. I would say Raise the Red Lantern.
I know.
Because that is my favorite Zhang Yimou film. So, yeah, let's. All right, ready?
You get the katana. I get the traditional and more appropriate Chinese sword.
Okay, ready?
1, 2, 3. Rock.
I'm sorry.
No, you're not.
I am not.
You are not sorry at all.
All right, next up, we have Hero or Mother. Oh, boy, that was a great movie.
I would, this is one where I would definitely watch Hero first, but I'm going to pick Mother.
Are you really?
Yes.
I think I would actually pick Hero first on this one, but I'm pretty loosey-goosey on this one. So if you want to go with Mother, I'll go with Mother.
I would pick Mother. Okay. I'm going to stick with Mother.
That's a really great film. Hero or Blood Simple. Early Coen brothers action there. Ooh.
I'm probably Hero on this one.
I'm in this zone with these movies right now where I'm feeling I could go either way with a lot of these choices, but yeah, I think I will go Hero on this one too. Hero or little Kubrick, The Killing. I love The Killing. I think if it wasn't for some of the narration that can drive me a little crazy sometimes, I'd probably pick it, but I think I'm going to go with Hero.
Yeah, I'm going to go with I'll go with Hero.
Hero or The Treasure of Sierra Madre. Ooh,
Frank when he goes crazy at the end. Mm-hmm. That's a strong sequence.
I'm going to the Treasure of Sierra Madre for me.
Yeah, I think so. Me too.
All right, next up we have Hero or Intacto. Well, there's a great film that hasn't popped up in quite a while.
Wow, when did we talk about that?
Right.
That was a great film.
Yes, it was.
I'm going to go with that.
I am too. Hero or In the Mood for Love. We have had more foreign films in this particular battle than we've had in a long time. It's a really exciting little run. I'm in the mood for love here.
Yeah, me too. Hands down.
Hero or The Diving Bell and the Butterfly.
Hero, please. Hero.
Diving Bell and the Butterfly for me.
It was a great film. I've now seen it twice.
I know.
Once to swear that I would never see it again, and once because you made me. It's great.
It is really great.
So
I will give you Hero on this one because I really enjoy both of these films. Well, that leaves Hero at 116 on our flick chart. Probably could have been a little higher, but it got knocked down early. And but you know what? We still have so many great films on our chart. All the films that are surrounding it, I just absolutely love. So I think it's just a really strong spot.
And the fact is, we're cruising up toward, I mean, what does this make for the number of straight up films that we've talked about? Like we're up at two.
This is 290.
290?
Yeah, so we're pushing 300 soon.
So I mean, look at this. We're cruising up toward 300 movies that we have talked about, and there are only 5 of them that are really, really bad.
Right.
Okay, maybe there's more than 5, but the rest of them are really great. So we got to stop feeling guilty about that.
We do.
It's not the women.
It's not the women. Absolutely. You're right about that.
Right. What's this do for your Letterboxd ranking over at letterboxd.com/thenextreel?
As much as I love it, it does have a little bit of a lull in it. So this one gets the 4.5 from me.
Strong 4.5 for me. Glass definitely half full.
Definitely one that
glass
I would
empty.
love to watch again because it's just, I mean, it really is just a glorious film to look at. And the Blu-ray looks great. It actually has a wonderful transfer. I don't have to complain about that anymore. So no critical Amazon review from me.
All right. So we've alluded to our last film in the Zhang Yimou series that we're doing this year. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, we're going to be wrapping up the Zhang Yimou series, which has been a great kind of look at his career. But we're looking at his newest film that is going to be opening here at the box office any day now. In fact, by the time you hear this, it may have already opened. But we're looking at The Great Wall. And in context of this film and kind of how the Great Wall got built and everything, I'm curious where this kind of fictional story goes with these dragons and why the Great Wall got built. So it'll be an interesting one to see if it's a really kind of big stumble for him or if there's more to this film than it appears.
All right. Until then, I got to go to bed.
Okay. I've got some golden leaves to go gather.
Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
I got a 1 star out of 5.
Ooh.
Got a 1 out of 7. This film is unrelentingly awful. To begin with, the martial arts sequences are pretentious and silly to the point of being unwatchable. I've been a fan of Chinese martial arts movies since getting hooked on Shaw Brothers films in the mid-1970s, and I understand that some suspension of disbelief is required, but this film is completely over the edge. Scene after scene of ridiculous flying swordsmen walking and fighting on water, characters making cow eyes at each other to express deep emotional soulfulness, and silly fight scenes backdropped by fluttering panels of colored silk. Of course, because there is zero character development, it's hard to give a damn about any of it. It all just plays as if affected and goofy. The ultimate point of the film is that violent oppression in the service of totalitarian authority, raining down arrows on schools, the murder of heroes, and presumably crushing democracy protesters under tank treads are to be applauded if performed in the service of unified central government. One can't help but think that Leni Riefenstahl would approve. Awful, awful, awful. Spend your time and money elsewhere. Yeesh.
Woof.
Feels like we saw a different movie.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I've got a 1 star that I think these people might have talked before they wrote their reviews. This is a 1 star by Dominic, who says it's not that good. Sorry. Great actors, okay fights. If you make it to the end, you'll realize it's just a thinly veiled propaganda film. I have seen many martial arts movies, good, bad, old, and new. So far, this is the only one I wish I could unwatch.
Ooh, ouch.
Yeah.
Ah. That's...
Damn.
Yeah. Sorry. Thanks, Amazon. It is hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, I know, you're telling me. Producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great conversations.
In Season 6, our Disease Films series had adaptations like The Omega Man, based on I Am Legend, The Andromeda Strain, Children of Men, and Blindness.
I Am Legend is so much better than the Omega Man.
Well, what about the Will Smith version?
Don't get me started.
For our This Is Real Life Jack series, we talked Black Hawk Down and Seabiscuit. Some great true stories based on fantastic books.
And we had more listeners' choices like The Fly, The Emigrants, and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
You just did a series on The Fly on the Sitting in the Dark podcast. Did you read the original material?
Wasn't watching every Fly movie enough?
Our Big Betty Davis series featured adaptations like The Little Foxes, Now Voyager, All About Eve, and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Are you calling Betty Davis big?
Only in personality and force.
She is a force to be reckoned with.
We talked about the entire The Godfather trilogy, of course. Iconic page to screen, even if it is just the one Mario Puzo book. I wonder if Coppola will ever make The Sicilian.
We also had some Zhang Yimou adaptations with Judo and Raise the Red Lantern. Absolutely gorgeous movies.
And don't forget the Hughes Brothers series with From Hell, based on the graphic novel. Brilliant material.
Kelly Reichardt gave us Wendy and Lucy and Certain Women, adapted from short stories.
Plus more Hayao Miyazaki as we tackled Howl's Moving Castle.
Find all these books and more at thenextreel.com/originals. Every purchase supports the show.
Get the full list of adapted films that we've covered at thenextreel.com/originals and start your next read today.